So today we are going to make a couple of sourdough things and some granola. And then I'll show you guys whatever else I eat. I am starting my day with my pomelo juice, which is so good. And I take my vitamins with it. And now it's like almost 10 and I'm going to start on some pizza dough because I have some sourdough starter that I'm trying to get really active for bread that I'm making tomorrow. And the discard I'll use for pizza dough right now. And then I'll make some granola and then we'll see what else we'll make. Okay. Here I'm starting to make my pizza dough for dinner. I actually think this is one of the easiest sourdough recipes that I've ever made, and it turns out really beautiful and fluffy. So I was quite impressed with this recipe, and I am potentially going to make extra so I can just freeze it and have dough in the freezer, which I can find and use on those days where I just want to do something quick. My kids love pizza, so I rather make the dough myself than get it from the store. It's just so much healthier and I can control the quality of the ingredients. Now right now I'm feeding my sourdough starter to get it really active so I can use it for bread later. Now I'm just putting it in a bowl that I oiled so I can allow it to rise until we are ready for it in the evening. With the rest of the sourdough starter, I am making some pancakes for breakfast. This recipe is very simple. It just uses some cinnamon, baking powder, salt, a little bit of maple syrup, and 1 egg per cup of starter. I'm also adding a little bit of fat. This time I chose coconut oil, but you can use butter or ghee. And here's my son who loves to help me with everything that he can. And yeah, just pour them in my cast iron, which I greased previously. My son Lucas enjoys to eat his pancakes with peanut butter and a small drizzle of maple syrup. It is one of his favorite breakfasts. You see, he's chowing down. So cute. For my actual breakfast, I decided to have some pancakes with banana, peanut butter, and a drizzle of maple syrup. Okay, so this has been a super life-changing trick that I'm using with my granola, which I've seen before, but now I'm trying it. I am grinding some nuts for it because it just makes it easier to eat for my toddler. And I'm using pecans and walnuts, and I just pulverize them in my blender and I add them to my basic granola recipe. And it adds a richness and almost like a crumb, like a cookie to my end granola, and It is just absolutely delightful. I am really, really, really set on making this recipe from now on, just because it just turns out so much better when I add the ground nuts instead of the whole cut up nuts. I like to add chia seeds and hemp seeds just to make it more nutritious. And lots of cinnamon. I add about 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. This recipe calls for about 6 cups of oats and 3 cups of ground nuts, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, about half a teaspoon of cardamom, 1 teaspoon of salt, and this is 1 cup of coconut oil, about a teaspoon of vanilla, and I use half a cup of maple syrup. Vamos a mezclarlo ahora. Wow. ¿Me ayudas? Ok. Gracias. Gracias, mamá. Wow. The following step is just to lay it on 2 sheet pans and just make the layers as thin as possible and bake them for about 30 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. When they come out, the granola is going to feel quite soft, but as it cools, it hardens and it becomes crumbly. Now I'm moving on to making my husband's breakfast and Lucas's breakfast as well. I guess it's not a breakfast anymore. He just enjoys smoothies, so I always make extra for him. I am making my homemade oat milk. And this smoothie has dates, the green powder, some vanilla protein powder, cinnamon, hemp seeds, frozen bananas, and blueberries with my homemade oat milk. Lately, I've been making a larger batch of smoothie and I just put it in the fridge for later, and that way my husband has a smoothie for work and then another one for a different day. I used to share and have the same as him, but I am feeling very picky being pregnant, so I make something different for me. Now it's been 30 minutes and the granola is just starting to get a little bit of color on it. It looks slightly golden, but it's still quite soft, and that's what you're looking for. It'll harden and get really crumbly and delicious as it cools. Now this granola has been so popular that I'm making it really often. I usually make it maybe twice a month, but this one it's been like a weekly thing. It's just so good. We're going through it really quickly, so I'm really happy with this recipe. So this is what I would consider my lunch. I was craving a smoothie since I didn't have one earlier, and I just wanted something simpler. So I'm having a banana date smoothie. And to this smoothie, I added my green superfood powder and some PB2, just for that peanut flavor that I really like, and water. Then later I snacked on some local nectarines that are in season, and I'm drinking my herbal tea. Now, this is later in the evening, before dinner. I am ready to measure my flour for bread. This is my normal sourdough recipe that makes 4 loaves, and it uses both whole wheat flour and all-purpose flour. Now I am stirring all of my flour with water only, no starter yet, and I am just going to incorporate everything really well and allow it to rest for 2 hours so the flour gets really hydrated. Now I'm starting to work on dinner, and since I'm making pizza, I just grabbed whatever veggies I had on hand that would make good toppings. I didn't have a lot, but we just went with onions, tomatoes, and lots of olives. Coge smoothie, mi amor. Ya te lo tomaste todo. Cómete el mango, mi lindo, todavía tienes mango ahí. And this pizza dough rose beautifully. It is so soft and fluffy. I am really happy with it, and I'm really looking forward to making it more often. The recipe that I used made enough pizza for 8 servings. I decided to do lots of olives on mine and some onions and some cheese, of course. I decided to use my cast iron to bake the pizza, and I just get it really hot in the oven by preheating the oven to 450 with my cast irons inside, and then I just slide the pizzas onto them, and it worked out beautifully. Now I'm making Lucas's little pizza with lots of olives as he loves them, and yeah, that was dinner for us. I was really happy with how the crust turned out. The flavor is so delicious. It was really filling, and it was nice and crispy on the bottom. Now, after the dough has been hydrating for 2 hours, I'm ready to add my sourdough starter and incorporate it really well. This part is a little bit tricky, but the more you just mix and blend, it just incorporates into the dough. And here I am feeding my sourdough starter again, just to make sure I keep it healthy and fresh. I let the sourdough starter sit in my dough for a full hour, and then I'm ready to do my first stretch and fold. As you can see, it is super flexible and stretchy already without doing anything extra before. So the hydrating process makes a huge difference, makes this process go a lot faster. Now, after letting my dough rest for another 30 minutes or so, I'm gonna do a process called lamination. This stretch and fold technique, it helps strengthen the gluten in the dough without heavy kneading. And by stretching the dough out thin and folding it back over itself, I'm organizing and layering the gluten strands, which gives the dough more structure and elasticity. Then when I shape it into a tight ball, it creates surface tension that it helps the dough rise taller and hold air better, so it develops a lighter and more open crumb during fermentation and baking. Now I'm just covering it, and I'm gonna allow it to rise for 8 to 12 hours. This is the next morning. I'm just making my tea as usual, and I'm going to divide my dough into 4 different loaves. At this point, it rose a lot overnight. It looks beautiful and fluffy, and I'm just going to break it into my different dough balls and shape them. I place the dough into my little bowls to help it hold its shape and structure while it's finishing rising. I move it to the fridge for a slow cold fermentation, which I think gives the dough more flavor and improves the texture, and it also becomes easier to score and bake. The cold rice also slows the fermentation down and allows the dough to develop more deeply during that time. Now I'm just dusting it with some flour and scoring it so it rises evenly. And I place it in my Dutch ovens, which have been sitting in my preheating oven, so they're very hot. And I put a little bit of water so they steam up and rise really well. And it's all done. That was all my baking for the weekend, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you next time.